Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. This is the Green Line on Rapid TV. Last week we had a conversation about climate variability and we had Professor Emmanuel Salau from the Agriculture Extension and Communication Department, Nasarawa State University, keffi. Nice. And we were talking about climate variability. We had an extensive conversation understanding the terms and understanding the impact of climate variability here in Nigeria. Of course, we asked a question last week whether or not the government is doing what it needs to do as regards policy formation so that we can have, we can now engage in smart practices, climate sensitive practices and policies as well. But we're getting on with the show. We're keeping up with the show from where we left it last week. And today we will be exploring climate smart agricultural solutions. We established last week that there is a problem, climate variability. Drought, dry spells, and the rainfalls. We cannot predict the weather as we used to. Now, in the 60s, 70s, as from research, we see that rainfall is at a particular time. We could tell when rain was falling. We could tell when it was dry season. We could tell when it was another season, planting and harvesting. But these days, because of the variability in climate, there is delayed rainfall, sometimes no rainfall at all in certain regions. And because we have established that this is a problem in the agricultural ecosystem, we must also learn to proffer solutions. And that today is where our conversation is headed. Let's go out on a very quick break. We'll bring back Prof again and we'll keep up with this conversation. Please stay with us.
From the soil beneath our feet to the tables across the world, agriculture is the heartbeat of Nigeria's future. Yet challenges persist: limited finance, outdated methods, policy gaps, and untapped opportunities. The Green Line is here to change that. A groundbreaking weekly television feature that connects policy with practice, farmers with markets, and innovation with impact. We dig deep into the full agricultural value chain, from land preparation to mechanization, financing, food preservation, exports, and beyond. The Green Line isn't just a show, it's a national development platform. Join me every Friday at 11 a.m. only on Rapid TV, Star Times channel 176, and online at www.rbnradiotv.com.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Welcome, Prof, and thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
All right. So to keep up with the conversation, we understand that there's a climate crisis, climate variability right now. Sure. So how do you think that Nigeria can mitigate this crisis?
Okay, thank you. Once again, my pleasure to be here. The solution to the climate change crisis globally, not just in Nigeria, as far as agriculture is concerned, is to adopt climate smart agricultural practices. Okay. And at various levels, government has been promoting and supporting the stakeholders in agriculture. As an agricultural extensionist, we also train extension workers to be conversant with these some of these climate smart agricultural practices. And if they are introduced to farmers, of course there are other non-governmental organizations that are also promoting some of these practices. There are basically about 8 of these packages. Okay. They are a package, so to say. For example, one of it is a agroforestry package as a climate smart agriculture. Yeah, agricultural practice. We also have diversification. Okay. Is the second one. We can also talk about soil nutrient, and of course, the one you were mentioning, hydroponics, they fall under what we call soil and water management practices.
Okay. I think we would expand on them one after another, because I was just going to ask what are the most practical climate smart solutions that farmers can adopt. So you have mentioned agroforestry, diversification. Let's pick them one after the other and discuss.
Let's start with agroforestry as a climate smart agricultural practice. What is agroforestry? It simply means a practice of combining tree crops production with arable crops with livestock on the same piece of land. Recall last week when we were talking about some of the factors that exacerbate climate change. We talk about land clearing for agriculture. Now, we are discouraging total clearing of the vegetation in the name of agriculture, or even for urban development. You want to build a house, you want to build a school, then you clear all the trees in the vicinity. It's a wrong practice. So in agriculture, we're telling the farmers that gone are the days you must clear all the trees to cultivate your maize or your yam or your cassava. No, we introduce to them what we call agroforestry practice. And there are some trees that are useful to the farmers. Either they are fruit trees or even they are timber trees. Because the timber, some of the reason for deforestation is for timber lumbering, you know.
This is where we get the woods that we build with.
So for example, if you go to my own farm in the village, you see a lot of millennia trees, you know, planted at distance.
And it's, I think it's very predominant in that area.
Sure.
National City, a lot of millennia trees.
You have cashew plants. You have orange trees, which you call citrus, mangoes. These are, you know, economic trees that you can integrate with your arable crops. You can plant your cassava in between them. You know, your oil palm plantation, you can have an oil palm plantation, you know, widely spaced, and in between them you are growing your arable crops that can be harvested after 1 year or 2 years. You can rear your animals under these same trees. So it is called agroforestry. And it is a very sustainable way of combating the impact of climate change, because you are providing the green environment. These trees, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. They protect the environment against erosion and against other harsh environmental distance. And then the farmer is able to benefit from all these trees, this combination of tree crops, arable crops, and livestock in one piece of land. So that is one common climate smart agricultural practice, which whether as small scale farmers or even large scale farmers, they can adopt it, and it will help reduce the impact of climate change. Now, when you talk about diversification, it's about not relying on only one line of production as a farmer. Diversification means a combination of different enterprises. If you are a cattle farmer, it does not mean you must just, you know, rely on your cattle rearing. Of course, your cattle are producing manure, the droppings. Or you are a poultry farmer. You can't just, you know, concentrate on poultry. What do you do with the poultry droppings? They are rich sources of manure, so you can have an integrated farm where you have livestock, you have tree crops, you have arable crops, you have vegetable crops. You know, there's a system now that is such it's an integrated system that even fisheries, you know, can come in, and you discover that there is what we call a circular kind of economy, whereby what is considered as waste material becomes useful in another line of production. So nothing is wasted. So this helps to give assurance to the farmer that if one line of business fails as a result of, for example, shortage of rainfall, your crops are not able to do well, your livestock will do, your fish will do. So if the other one is lost as a result of impact of climate change, the farmer will still have something to, leverage on and fall back to. So that is diversification. So we are also teaching that to rural farmers to ensure that they have diversification of their enterprises. Now, when you talk about the issue of improving the soil nutrient, again, is the issue of recycling waste materials. And in the issue of improving soil nutrient, we are moving away gradually from synthetic products like chemical fertilizers. Research has shown that the use of chemical inputs, fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, they have added to the impact of climate change. They have also adversely affected the soil and thereby reducing yield or productivity of our crops. So the end thing now is to rely on organic sources of manure and herbicides and pesticides. Of course, I may not want to talk much about the health impact of using those chemicals. A lot of our crops, our farm produce, they are overdosed with chemicals. For your information, sadly, Nigeria being one of the world leading producer of cowpea, you know what we mean by cowpea? Beans.
Beans, yes.
We cannot, our beans is not acceptable in the international market.
Yeah, I saw the report that says about 60 to 70% of our exported produce, especially the cowpeas, are returned back to Nigeria because of the
high doses of chemicals. From production, from planting to harvesting, we bulldoze cowpea with chemicals. Now, thank God, the science of biotechnology has come to a point that we now have varieties of this cowpea that are resistant to those pests, for which reason we are using chemicals. So the breakthrough came some years ago by the Institute of Agricultural Research, Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, and the National Biotechnology Research and Development Agency. They are doing a great job in that aspect, trying to breed, varieties of crops that can be resistant to some of these diseases and pests that make us to continuously apply chemicals on our crops in the name of protecting them from pests and diseases. And of course, there are also non-synthetic pesticides, organic pesticides that are being developed. Some research institutes like the National Stored Product Research Institute at Ilorin, they are coming up with some of these alternatives, organic pesticides, so that we'll do away with chemicals. So all these are part of the effort to protect the health of the soil and improve plant nutrition or fertility. So instead of gathering, in those days when farmers want to clear their lands preparatory for the rainy season, they will gather all the the straws and then they set fire on them. This fire contributes to climate change because it releases carbon monoxide and carbon and nitrate oxide into the atmosphere. Now these roughages or leftover of last harvest can be collected and incorporated into the soil, buried under, they can be plowed into, and they become a source of organic manure. and then the animal droppings, and all the fallen leaves in the farm. Of course, by nature, God had created the ecosystem in a manner that there is a recycling of everything.
Yeah, so it can cater.
It can cater for the needs, the nutrient needs of the plant naturally.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Now, what about soilless farming? Can we say
Yes.
soilless farming is also a climate smart agricultural practice?
It is under the other package which I was about to begin talking on, because I said the climate smart agricultural practices, they are in packages.
Okay.
So I just talk about two packages. Now the third package which we mentioned so that you can hear about the soilless agriculture is soil and water management.
Okay.
Recall that the impact of climate change has made some regions of this country and the world to be dry. The water bodies are no longer there. The rain is no longer adequate for us to rely on for growing crops. And many other factors, insecurity, can make people not to go far into the interior to farm in the natural soil. Okay. So soilless agriculture is a technology that you can use even a small space like this studio. You can grow your vegetable right here in the studio, and they are fine and they will do very well. So one of it is aeroponics. Okay. Now aeroponics, as the name implies, aero is air. Okay, so it's production of plants that are hanging in the air. And then how did they hang in the air and they get soil nutrient? Now these soil nutrients, there are three basic nutrients that plant needs. Okay. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These are the major, what we call macronutrients. Okay. And then, of course, there are some micro ones that what we call trace elements. Now, soil scientists have been able to produce some of these, or dictate and identify some of these nutrients. And we can provide them artificially using a water solution, a liquid solution that will be, stirred up or heated up so that it releases vapor. We call it mist. And that mist comes up, goes up. The plant's roots are hanging in the air, sustained with a structure. Okay. So all they need is how they can get that soil nutrient, because it is the root of the plant that absorb the soil nutrient from the soil. So, but the soil must be wet. If the soil is dry, the plant's root cannot absorb any nutrient. So that's why the solution is in liquid form, and it is stirred up in form of a mix of vapor. So it reaches the roots of the plants, your vegetables, your yam, or anything. And so long as the roots are getting in contact with that mist or vapor, they are absorbing the required nutrient. The nutrient is in that water solution that is underneath. Okay. So that is how aeroponics works. And the advantages of aeroponics is that there is a controlled environment. The temperature is controlled, and in fact, the growth length, the length of time taken for the crops to mature is shorter than when you plant them in the natural soil. So that's for aeroponics. Okay. Well, on the other hand, we have hydroponics, growing inside the water solution. Okay. So all you need to do is to have a mesh material. You can have a stagnant water, or you can just have a container that there is water. And then for the concentration of the soil nutrient to be in one place, you can have this coconut, the back of coconut can be made as a mash, something that can hold water. So that is enough, or sawdust.
Okay.
Sawdust. You know, these things can be gathered in the water solution and add nutrients. The required nutrient of the plant are added there, and the root will be absorbing this thing without any soil, and the plant will grow.
Will grow.
Yes. So this is to, you know, circumvent the scarcity of water that will hinder crop production. And there is also what we call drip irrigation.
Okay.
You know, using water maximally. You know, you maximize the use of water. In a drip irrigation system where there is a dry area. You know, we are blessed in this country that we have natural bodies of water, and we have rainfall almost every year, no matter how little we have rain.
Yeah.
Go to other countries like the Middle East. The other day I had Iran was saying that if rain does not fall in the next 12 months, that there's going to be calamity, because they are relying on artificial irrigation for their agriculture. So now we can use in dry areas where there is a scarcity of water. Drip irrigation is designed in such a way that pipes are laid from the water source around the field, along the ridges, and there are openings only at the point where the plant is growing. If you are planting at so centimeters apart, the piping, the outlets for the water is designed to fit with the distance of the plant, so that the required amount of water is just released and delivered at the root of that plant stand. The other surrounding space where there is no plant, there will be no water there.
So you can manage.
You can manage with little water.
Okay.
This is part of the technology of water management in the face of climate change, where there is a dry spell, where there are dry rivers, no much water in the rivers or in the well or whatever you are using.
Okay. So do you think that Nigeria has fully embraced these climate smart?
Of course. There are. It might not be widespread adoption. It's work in progress, but there are many organizations that are embracing. You know, most of these greenhouses that you see constructed. I visited some of these farms around Abuja here, and we have some even in our state. They have greenhouses where you grow your vegetables and other crops within the protected environment with less water consumption. These are some of the technologies to cope with the dryness, the shortage or scarcity of water in the face of climate change.
All right, let's move a bit now to, you know, what you actively practice. You are a professor of agricultural extension and communication. Do you think that this knowledge that you have shared today is effectively passed on to the students of agriculture? Because most times you'd see that in Nigerian universities, what we do, in my university I would say, is the practical aspect of agriculture is almost little to nothing. Most times they sit in the classroom, and you'd agree with me that agriculture is learned by doing, not just by saying. So do you think that we are doing well enough passing this knowledge across to the students and the next generation who would become custodians of this knowledge in the agricultural ecosystem?
All right. As a university, let me be specific about Nasarawa State University, the Faculty of Agriculture, where I belong. We're doing our best to ensure that our practicals are not compromised. The B-Agric program, we call it Bachelor of Agriculture. It's a 5-year degree program. Of course, there's a new curriculum now that NUC has introduced, which is called the CC Mass, and they're trying to, of course, there's still the option for universities to choose whether to go with the B-Agric or to go for the BSc program. For us in Nasarawa State University, the Faculty of Agriculture has resolved to continue with the B-Agric. Now, in the B-Agric program, from 200 level up to 400 level, the students have practicas.
Okay.
We call it farm practice.
Okay.
Every Friday of the week,
Okay.
200 level and 300 level students must be on the farm for various practicas. And this drip irrigation I talk about is one of the technologies that you go right now to our faculty, you will see it on our student practicas.
Drip irrigation.
Drip irrigation.
Interesting.
Yes. And in the 4th year of the B-Agri program, we call it the practical year. For the whole year, the students are on practical. First semester, they do practical courses within the university. They have practical courses. They must be on the field. The lecturer will just go and make an introduction, give a background of the course, and then the technical staff take them through the practicals.
Okay.
Then in the 2nd semester of that 400 level, they are sent to related industries where they can see more, because of course we know that our universities, we have challenge of equipment. So some of the equipment that we are not able to afford as a university, they can get to see them in the industry, like large-scale farms, research institutes, and other government and non-governmental organizations. So we are doing our best to ensure that the practical is not compromised.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. You'd agree that we've had an absolutely enlightening and educating segment today on the Green Line. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us on this conversation. We definitely had an amazing time. I can say now that I've tapped, maybe 1/3, not up to that of Prof's knowledge. Thank you so much again. All right. If you're just joining us, we have been having a conversation centered around climate smart agricultural practices. Of course, a continuation of what we had last week when we were talking about climate variability. We stated the problem. Now we're trying to proffer possible solutions on how to engage in agriculture regardless of the climate situation here in Nigeria. And we have had the pleasure of having Professor Emmanuel Salau, the Professor of Agricultural Extension and Communication, Nasarawa State University, keffi. Thank you so much again for joining us on the show. All right, this is where we'll be winding down the conversation for today. But before we go on, Prof mentioned a number of things that we can engage in, smart agricultural practices. We will be exploring one of those today. And today we'll be looking at what drip irrigation system is all about. Let's go take a look.
Today, we're exploring drip irrigation systems, a modern marvel transforming agriculture and gardening. Whether you're a farmer or home gardener, drip irrigation saves water, time, and money while increasing yields. Let's dive in step by step. Drip irrigation is a method that delivers water directly to the root zone of plants through a network of valves, pipes, tubing, and emitters. Unlike traditional irrigation methods, which can waste a lot of water due to evaporation and runoff, drip irrigation ensures that every drop counts. Drip irrigation uses 30 to 50% less water than conventional methods by delivering water directly to the plant roots. Consistent and precise watering promotes healthier plant growth and higher yields. Since water is only delivered where needed, there is less water available for weeds to grow. Keeping foliage dry reduces the risk of fungal diseases. Automation of the system can significantly reduce the time and effort required for watering. Water source. Typically a tap or a water tank. Filter. Ensures that debris doesn't clog the system. Pressure regulator. Maintains consistent water pressure. Mainline tubing. Carries water from the source to the garden. Emitters/drippers. Release water to the plants at a controlled rate. Valves. Control the flow of water. Timer. Automates the watering schedule. Map out your garden or farm area, noting the location of plants and the water source. Install the mainline tubing from the water source to the garden. Place emitters near the root zone of each plant. Use connectors and fittings to attach all parts securely. Turn on the system and check for leaks and proper water distribution. Check the system for clogs and leaks regularly. Clean filters periodically to prevent blockages. Adjust the watering schedule based on seasonal needs. Drain the system before winter to prevent damage from freezing temperatures. Drip irrigation is a game changer for efficient water use and better plant health. Follow these steps to save water, reduce labor, and boost crop yields. Whether growing vegetables, flowers, or trees, drip irrigation helps create lush, productive gardens with minimal effort.
All right, thank you so much for being here. As Nigeria confronts the realities of climate variability, one truth stands clear. The future of food depends on resilience, from irrigation and innovation to policy reform and farmer education. Climate-smart agriculture is no longer optional. It is very essential. And if we act decisively today, we can safeguard our farmers, stabilize our food systems, and secure a sustainable future for the generations to come. This is the Green Line, and this is the Green Line where we cultivate conversations that grow the future. And I have been your host, will be your host, and of course, I'll be here next week again. My name is Martha Alu. Follow us on all our social media platforms and rewatch this episode on YouTube at Official Rapid TV. See you next week.